I can't believe that we still have to protest this shit. Pardon my language, but that was one of the best signs that at recent protest marches um, over the past years. I can't believe we still have to protest stuff that we thought we had conquered already. We thought we had gained progress and didn't have to worry about anymore. But of course, we know that we still do have to protest in many areas, lots of ways. What I want to talk about today, again, is the subject of how the religious right, the religious right of Christianity, has been trying to push back all kinds of rights that women have gained over the years. Not just women, but LGBTQ people, Black and brown people. But today I want to talk about women because it is part of our news right now. Have you heard about the Tradwife movement, where women, Christian women, are choosing to live the life of a traditional wife, according to biblical values? What does that mean? Again, I can't believe we're still having to go back over this, but um, years and years ago, those of us Christians who really wanted to take the Bible seriously, not literally, looked at those passages in the New Testament that talked about the hierarchy of man over woman. Take this one from Ephesians. And this is the way it's usually read. And I'll get to the other part of that in a second. Wives, be subject to your husbands as to God. For the husband is the head of the wife, just as Christ is head of the church. So just as the church is subject to Christ, so wives ought to be subject in everything to their husbands. That's been used in a lot of ways, not the least of an excuse for domestic violence. It's unacceptable. But here we go again. Those women who are buying into the trad wife, and fine, if they really, really want to. If a woman wants to stay home and bake and cook and raise the kids and wear aprons, and that's fine. That's fine, as long as it's a choice. And as long as it's not put out there as the norm for Christian living. So what about this biblical passage here? For those who point to this as the reason, the rationale for this hierarchical code, they always forget to read the verse that comes right before that says, be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ. Be subject to one another. And then at the end, where he says, um, everyone should love, every man should love his wife as himself. Now, hopefully, the man loves himself and respects himself in order to be the same toward his partner. But doesn't that put a whole different spin? Not spin, different, no, put a whole different meaning on it. We are to be subject to one another, to care for one another, not to subjugate, but to serve one another. That's a different way of putting things, where instead of having this hierarchy of power, we have mutuality, right? These household codes that show up in the New Testament, in other places too, they were common in the days of the Roman Empire. These were used as the order for living. This is how life was organized. This is how life was to be lived in order to have a civil, peaceful society. Women subject to men. It goes on then to talk about children children are supposed to obey their parents, right? That's the right order of things. And then, of course, slaves are in there too. Slaves are to obey their earthly masters. So this was not a Christian thing. This came out of Aristotle. This came out of the household codes of that day. And so what the writer of Ephesians and others did in Jesus in light of Jesus' teaching is to then make it mutual. They took something very familiar and made it into something that was very, very different and inclusive and mutual, non-hierarchical, not at all what's being promoted today. And so as a practicing Christian, and if you're a practicing Christian or thinking about it, or maybe you've just rejected the Bible out of hand, that it makes no sense. This is why, because these religious right people, they're going to take Bible passages and they're going to use them. They use them in order to justify whatever, and they use them against us as well. We have to know the Bible. We have to know these passages, not just to say, well, that's a bunch of malarkey, but to say this is what it really is saying. This is what the gospel message is. This is the real Jesus, not the Jesus that is trying to subjugate people. So I'd appreciate your feedback. Let me know. How can we make sure that we get this message out that the gospel is indeed good news and not anti-woman? Let me know. I can't wait to hear from you. Bye.